course, the big news as far as MMA is concerned was the event on Saturday, and there were a lot of interesting things that came out of that event. The Jim Miller win, most wins in UFC history. He's unbelievable. The Caceres Pineda fight was great. But to me, the biggest story by far was what happened in the main event, and that was Kai France versus Amir Albazi, which was a really fun fight. The flyweights don't often get a chance to headline these events, and I thought both guys stepped up in a big way, and I thought it was a really entertaining affair. Ultimately, I thought Kai France won. It seems like most people think that he won. Upon initial viewing, I had it actually 1-2 for Kai, 3 for Albazi, 4-5 for Kai. I had a 4-1. Then, of course, I find out, as we all did, that the judges scored it in favor. At least 2 of the judges scored it in favor of Amir Albazi. So I went back and watched it, and the one that I could give you is the second. I feel very strongly about the 4th and the 5th, and I feel strongly about the first as well. I will admit, 1 and 2 are super close. 3 was easy to score. That's all Albazi. 5 was very easy to score, all Kai France. I don't know how you can give 4 to Albazi, to be honest. And I feel like 1 is pretty easy to score. It comes down to 1 and 2. But anyway, I was shocked in this one. I would say, listen, I'm not going to get into the whole it was a close fight, not a robbery. It was a robbery, not a close fight. It was a controversy. Who gives a fuck? No one cares. Point is, I was very surprised. The last time I was this surprised when a scorecard was read was Gordon Patty. Now, is it as big of a robbery? Is it not? I don't really need to rank them for you, but I was very surprised, ultimately, that they scored in favor of Amir Albazi. I thought the name of the game is you got to win the majority of the rounds. And I thought Kai France won the majority of the rounds. I thought he won at least 3 of the 5, if not 4 of the 5. And that got me thinking about several things, which I would love to talk about on this Monday afternoon. Number one, look, I have said this for a very long time. I really strongly believe, I've said this dating back to, 2012, 2011, 10-point must system will never truly work. I don't care what anyone, this I will go to my grave believing. The 10-point must system does not truly work for MMA, and you can make a case it doesn't always work in boxing either, right? Because you have a super close round, it's 10-9. You have a blowout round, it's 10-9. How does that make any sense? But I don't need to get into that. For MMA, it definitely doesn't work. Number one, 5-minute rounds. There's just more to deal with. Number 2, the grappling, the submissions, all that and more to deal with. This whole, it comes down to damage thing drives me so insane. I hate this, it comes down to damage thing. It has to be the most subjective scoring criteria of all time. What does that mean? Are they video game characters with a little thing here and then you just see the damage and their life go down? What? How do you actually quantify that? How do you score damage? What does that even mean? I almost wish they went back to the old system where things like aggression and octagon control and all that other nonsense was a factor or more of a factor, because this whole damage thing is crazy to me. There's a part of me that almost wishes if they just went and scored these fights in total, right? And it's all right, this is schoolyard rules or pride rules or one championship rules where it's who's the man who's standing at the end? Who's in better shape at the end? Would that be better? Because the first round doesn't really impact the 5th? I don't know. I'm not trying to, do this dramatic overhaul. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what could have helped on Saturday. Open fucking scoring. That could have helped on Saturday. I tell you, if Kai France knew that he was down, maybe he does things a little bit differently. I don't know. I'll tell you, if he found out that Sal D'Amato gave Albazi the 4th, maybe he does something differently. I don't know. Maybe he goes for the 5th. Who knows? Who knows? Even though I thought he won the 4th and the 5th. Open scoring would help. But ultimately, the only thing that I feel like I can actually suggest right now is this idea of transparency, this idea of accountability, This idea of explanation. Because here's the problem. And here's the thing that I'm getting quite sick of. Every single weekend, it seems, there's a controversial call. And it's not always at the top of the card, so we don't always pay this much attention. This time, it's the main event. But we sit here and we whine and we complain and we talk about what should change and what's broken and what's rigged and what's not. And ultimately, we're just spinning our wheels. Nothing is going to change. Nothing is being done to change. And so the one thing that I would love to see change is not really to the rules, not really to the criteria, none of that stuff. Because I don't feel like we are ready for any of that change. That would be nice, but that's just way too radical for this somewhat archaic model and world that we're living in. The one thing that I think is changeable, if that's even a word, beginning this week, is transparency and accountability. And what I mean by that is, why is it that we do not hear from these men and women who are the officials on Saturday night, on Sunday, on Monday, to at least explain to us what they were thinking? So instead of me sitting here and being like, yo, I watched that because look, I get it. I'm in a better spot than they are. Excuse me. I'm sitting at home. I'm watching on a screen. I'm listening to commentary. I'm getting a director changing the camera angles for me. Like, I get it. I'm in a much easier spot. I've watched fights front row. It's not that hard. I mean, it's not that easy. It's really tough when something's happening on the other end of the cage or ring to really truly understand what's going on. They're watching it live, super close. So I get it. Plus, I could go back and rewatch it. There's no pressure on me. I'm just going to sit here and talk about it, and if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. They're actually affecting someone's life. They're affecting their pay. They're affecting their trajectory. They're affecting their resume. They're affecting the state of their career. Maybe they get released because now it's 2 losses in a row as opposed to, 1. Who knows? And so instead of me just sitting here and being like, man, watch that again. That was definitely a 4-1. Maybe I could give the second to Albazi, this and that. I would much rather sit here and be like, well, according to Sal D'Amato, according to Judge X, this is what he saw in the 4th round. This is why he scored it. And then we could break that down and that explanation down as opposed to just like willy-nilly, debating, arguing, belly aching on Twitter and all this shit afterwards. And then in 2 days, we're on to the next one. That's the problem. By Saturday night, Vancouver, no one's even going to remember this. And it'll be the same issues coming up all over again. And then we'll do this whole freaking song and dance. I feel like it's Groundhog Day every few weeks with this. And so instead of sitting here and complaining about that, because, I've been talking about this idea of transparency for at least 5, 6, 7 years, ever since I saw the NBA do it and other leagues do it, where they have a pool reporter talk to officials after a game and address controversial calls. Do they always say the most enlightening things? No, they don't. But at least there's something. At least you could say, okay, this is the reason why Jimmy Butler was given a technical foul in the second quarter. This is what they heard. This is what they saw. This is why they reacted that way. There's something, as opposed to us just like hypothesizing. And so ever since I saw that, I've been talking about this, and I saw it pop up. Izzy mentioned something like this. Other people are talking about this. Great. It would be nice. But instead of me sitting in this chair once again on a Monday complaining about all this, I reached out because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to reach out and get some answers. And so I first reached out to Andy Foster, the head of the California State Athletic Commission, which I think is the gold standard as far as commissions are concerned. And I said, could we live in a world where after each event, there's, not a press conference. You wanna protect the officials, fine. But you have a media member, whether it's in person or on the phone or virtually, whatever, speak to the officials. We request, hey, we'd like to talk to Mr. So-and-so because of so-and-so fight. I know they officiate 8 fights on a card. There's a lot. But, maybe you could talk to 1 or 2 and you can ask that person, I don't know, a handful of questions, 5, 6 questions. And now we have an explanation as to why they made this call. Why did you stand them up in the second? Why did you score this a 10-9 and not a 10-8 in the third? Why did you these guys have incredible power. And save me the talk that they don't get paid enough. That's not on us. You guys fix that. The commission fix that. You pay them. Fucking figure it out. That's not on me. I just want to know what they're thinking. I just want to understand what's going on in their minds. No other sport do you have a situation where the people with such incredible power just get to go home and we forget about them on Monday. Scot-free, no explanation, never have to face the music, even if it's a good moment. Hey man, you scored that at 10-8. That was great. That took some balls. Why did you score at 10-8? Well, he did this, that. I would like to know. That's how we learn. That's how we get educated. You could talk to me all you want about your classes, about your seminars, about all this stuff. I want to know from the people who are there on Saturday why you did what you did, why you made that decision. If Dave Roberts takes out Clayton Kershaw in the 9th, I get to talk to him as a media member. I get to ask him, why did you make that call? If Michael Malone starts the 4th quarter with Nikola Jokic on the bench, I get to ask him that. You understand? If Bill Belichick doesn't start freaking Tom Brady in the Super Bowl or whatever that guy was who didn't start that one time, I get to ask him that question. What was that guy's name? He was a defensive guy. GC, you definitely know who I'm talking about. Remember this? They sat him in the Super Bowl. Fuck, screwed that up. No?
Malcolm Jenkins?
Oh, it's Malcolm Jenkins, yeah. It's a good call. I get to ask him those questions. If Julius Randle takes a shitty 3, I get to ask, why don't I get to ask Mr. So-and-so about the calls that he made? And so Andy Foster, believe this, guys, I have breaking news. Frank? Usually quicker. When we had the dude on before, you were quick on that. He told me, believe it or not, after every event in California, I've been doing this 2006. I never knew this. Every event in California, there is actually a commission meeting with the officials that the media is allowed to attend. Did you guys know this? I never knew this. This has never been publicized. Now, he said the media usually doesn't attend because you're at the press conference, which, all right, fine. You're doing it at the same time. They're both happening at the same time. By the way, one person could break off, or how about this? Someone who's at home could call in to listen to this, to ask a question. He said the media is welcome, but you guys choose to go. Like, what? The media is welcome? That is unbelievable. Okay, that's great. That's a start. So the next time there's a big event in California, an MMA event, and there's something that I want to ask about, controversial or not, he said I could text him a question, or I could listen in, and he will get the answer. He will get the explanation. That's a start. So we're getting things done here, my friends. Then I called Mike Mazzulli of the ABC, also Mohegan Tribe, very influential guy. And I said, same question. Could we live in a world where the officials are, present, where we can ask them questions, pool reporter, whatever, just so we could get an explanation? His response was, I'm trying to protect them. And I said, with all due respect, protect, they're doing a public job. They don't make enough money. I get that, but is that really, they're deciding the outcome of fights, which do involve a lot of money, show win, which is completely archaic. We need some answers here. We need an explanation. That's how we all get better. That's how the vitriol goes down. It's could it be done in a professional manner? This guy's talking, no. Israel Adesanya is not going to be attending the post-fight chat. He's a friend. He's a teammate. Of course he's going to get heated. But you send one of us, you give us a way to communicate. At least I could sit here and be like, all right, in the second round of the main event, Doug Crosby gave Rafion Stotts the round because of X, Y, and Z. Wouldn't that be great? He said, I'll tell you what, next ABC commission, I'll put it on the agenda and we'll talk about it. Frank, we're getting things done.
That's the way to do it.
No, I wanted the breaking news for that.
No.
Okay? So everyone could sit online and they could complain. We are getting things done. Now, then I reached out to Jeff Mullen. Jeff Mullen of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, because, most events happen there, and this event happened there. He was a little less open to my suggestion. Asked him the same question. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, officials in other sports never respond to the press. Representatives of the league talk to the press concerning the calls of the officials. I told him that was not true because there's even an NBA official Twitter account where they have transcripts of conversations with the pool reporter. And I texted him, one from a March 15th game between the Celtics and the Timberwolves, and then another one from a game in May between the Suns and the Nuggets. It's on their feed. They make it public. They even give you like a whole breakdown of the last 2 minutes of games and what calls got right. And then I was like, well, respectfully, I don't think that's true. Sent him some examples. And then he again said, oh, it's just the crew chief. Now, the crew, like that, this guy's involved in the game. So, yes, it's not apples to apples. There's no crew chief in MMA, but there's at least someone who's responding to these questions. Why can't these judges, why can't these referees answer these questions? Why do I have to ask Dana White these questions? Why do I have to ask Scott Coker these questions? That's the part that is so frustrating to me. Again, as I said after Haney Lomachenko, there's always going to be close fights. There's always going to be, controversial or polarizing decisions. It's just the nature of a sport that is being judged on and a sport that is using a system which, again, doesn't work. It is not applicable. Say whatever you want. 10-9 makes no sense. It just makes no sense. This would be like, I hate when I have to do this, but it's like you watch a football game and it's like, oh, the Patriots scored more points than the Falcons, give them a 10-9. No, there's actual, numerical value attached to everything that they're doing. They are leading after the first quarter 17-3. Not arbitrary 10-9. That's why it will never work. That's why it will always present problems. But that's a problem for another day. What I'm hearing right now is, according to California, there is at least some accountability. There's at least some transparency. Great. Let's use that. According to the ABC, they're open to talking about it. Great. Nevada, not so much. All right, we'll work on that. But that to me that's why I always campaign for open scoring. That's the main reason I campaign for open scoring. So at least there's some transparency, some accountability. It's not, oh, Kaikar France just lost. Take down the tent. Let's go to Vancouver and we're on to the next one. What? That's crazy. Things are happening. Broadcasters are being educated. I feel like we as a community are being, educated a little more. And make no mistake, a lot of the vitriol that you see online after calls like these, I recognize it. A lot of it stems from gambling. People are upset that the guy that they bet on, that they thought they were a second away from cashing that ticket, and they're like, what? They're already counting that money. So I get that a lot of that comes from the gambling world. I get that. And then you see, fighters upset, teammates, whatever. I get that's personal. They're biased. That's a friend. You're gonna get your friends back. You're gonna have your friends back. All I want to know is why they are making these calls. That's it. It's the craziest thing. At least we get some sort of explanation. That's all. That's all I want. That to me, I think, is the first step. The first step to at least, because if you're going to have to answer for this stuff, if you're going to have to at least provide some sort of explanation, maybe there's now a little bit more pressure. Maybe there's, an illumination, a discourse, thoughts, or I don't know, something. That to me feels like the proper first step. How did you guys score the main event? Which, again, you see 3-2 and you're like, that's a pretty close fight. Sure, you watch the entire fight, and I think that, I don't know, I thought, upon initial viewing, I thought it was 4-1. I'm giving it 3-2 because I'm trying to see where they're coming from here, but I can't give him the fourth. I can't give Albazi the fourth, that's for sure. I could give him the second. But I thought Kaikar France won that fight fair and square. You guys, GC, New York Rick, am I crazy? How'd you score it?
I had the same card as Michael Bell. I had 1-4-5 for Kaikar France. That was my card.
That's the same one I had too.
Yeah.
I mean, giving Amir round 4 to me is crazy.
That's a bad score for sure. I agree.
It's a bad score upon watching it, and you can't always go by the stats because the stats don't tell the story. But even when you go by the stats, like you take the watching and the stats, you put them together. There's no way you could give Albazi the fourth round.
I'm throwing the stats out. Bad score for that round, no matter how you slice it. Just wrong. Just wrong is the way to say it.
I rewatched the fourth round with like an eye of like, okay, Albazi won this round. Let me see how he did that, and I just couldn't get there. I just thought Kai France pretty clearly won round 4, and that's what ended up giving Albazi the fight was the scoring of the fourth round for Amir Albazi.
That's what did it.
Yeah. This was also, I think this is the third time this has happened since I started on the show. It happened in the Calvin Kattar Josh Emmett fight, where one fighter wins 3 rounds on the majority of the judges' scorecards. So like he wins round 1 on 2 of the judges' scorecards, but doesn't end up winning the fight. Like it's like a very rare when it's like an incredibly close fight. It's like even hard to put it into words. But like that's the third time I've seen that happen since I started on the show.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about my transparency thing and all that? Like, is there any sort of
someone on Twitter threw out the idea of even giving a box on the side of the scorecard that you could scribble reasoning on why they won the rounds. Just like
they only have a minute though. You got to give these guys like a mental break. You know what I mean? I'd rather them do it afterwards, to be honest. But
I mean, perfect world is they answer to the questions, like, and people can go back and watch it. But I just don't know if they're ever going to do that.
I'm going to fall into contrarian type here, unfortunately. And let me say a few things up front. One, I agree with you. Change needs to be made. I'd say more at the scoring level than necessarily the judging level. I mean, sorry, the rules level than at the judging level. I agree with you that the scoring system doesn't work. I agree that there's improvements that could be made to the criteria, all those things. I also don't feel that transparency is bad. I think transparency is good, and more transparency works and should be asked for and can be granted. But I would also ask, you're comparing to other sports, right? Has the discourse around NBA officiating improved because of them answering? Has the pool reporting led to an improvement in some capacity?
I don't know if the improvement is the thing that we're looking for in the NBA. And again, impossible to compare, but like,
what is the benefit of the transparency is essentially what I'm asking. Who is it benefiting?
Here's the problem. In the NBA, for example, it's like, I know and you know what traveling is. You know what 3 seconds in the key is. You know what goaltending is, although sometimes that could be a little subjective. I feel like none of us even know what the fuck we're looking at anymore in MMA, right? Like, how could you all get it? How could we all get it as a collective so wrong, right? Who's the media member out there? Who's the fighter out there that's like, who's not tied to any of this? Who's like, oh yeah, Albazi won that. What are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So we're all getting it wrong. So that's why I feel like we need to be educated.
But isn't that an issue with the scoring, with the rule set, the criteria, all those types of things, as opposed to the transparency of it? Again,
what I mean by the transparency is education. You need to educate the fighters. You need to educate the public. You know what I mean? You need to tell us what you're seeing so that when I sit here, it's not just me going like, I don't know what the fuck this guy was talking about. It's like, oh, he said X, Y, and Z was what he saw in the fourth. All right, now we understand.
Here's my fear what will ultimately happen. Nothing will change from the perspective that, let's say, okay, Sal D'Amato, Chris Lee come out and explain their cards. Is that going to shift opinions one way or another? Essentially, I don't have as much faith as you do that everybody is just looking for an explanation as you are, which I think is fair to ask for. And again, I don't have an issue with it. But I ultimately think because of the heels being dug in, because of what you've mentioned about betting, ultimately the explanations will not amount to anything productive, in my opinion. It will just be people saying, see, I knew it was that way, or people saying, see, I knew that this person was crazy.
It's hard to cater anything to Twitter because like they're going to complain about everything, but I'm not necessarily talking about for the sake of Joe from Michigan. I'm talking about for our sake as people who are, we're here on a Monday trying to inform and trying to provide interesting discussion and do this in a right way. I have no materials. I have no, at least like when we complain about why Colby Covington is getting, a title shot, as crazy as it may sound to us, at least we could say, all right, this is what Dana White said. You know what I mean?
I mean, even for
at least we could point to something. Here we can't even point to anything.
I mean, even just for Kai Kara France, Chris Lee going to the back and talking to Kai Kara France and being like, "Hey, man, I gave Amir Albazi the 4th round, and that gave him the fight. Here's why I did that."
There's none of that.
I agree that would
why
have
is it
some
so
impact,
secretive?
But what would that impact be? Would Kai Kara France say, "Okay,
I can't"?
How much is it going to hurt, though?
I can't take the what would that impact be, because that to me is just like, oh, nothing's going to happen, so let's just keep it the same. We need to start somewhere.
Yes, but I don't think that. I think we're starting at the end.
We're starting at the easiest.
Scoring.
We're starting with the easiest.
We need to start at the beginning, which is the rules, the regulations.
1,000%. But like I said, this could be done. Nevada could announce, starting this Saturday, we're going to make them available. That's like the easiest change. The rules, meetings, hearings, this and that, that's going to take months, if not years. I mean, we could even start hard. There needs to be a national commission. That, like, when I was talking to Andy and when I was talking to Mazzulli today, they're like, yeah, but like, if I say that, you know, Nevada may not be on board, Florida may not be on board, New York may. I was like, this is the stupidest thing of all time. Again, just to properly explain this to everyone, could you imagine if the rules and like the guidelines that they were playing under in basketball in New York were different than in Miami, were different than in Chicago? Like, what? It all has to be the same playing field with the same rules and the same, like, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And when you talk about the dangers involved in the sport and the health and safety, and you talk about like how much is at stake from a monetary perspective, you know what I mean? Like
that's the right button.
But here's the thing, like, let's talk a regular season basketball game.
Yeah.
If an official blows a call against the Heat, Jimmy Butler's getting paid the same. You know what I mean? If official blows a call against Kai Kara France, he ain't getting paid the same, especially someone at his level. You know, that's the crazy part about it.
He's not getting paid the same, and now his shot at a title is
that's
severely damaged.
That's the urgency. For sure, the urgency in this scenario, the reason something needs to be done, right? I'm not advocating for nothing to be done. I think something absolutely has to be done. The urgency of the scenario is what you've described. There is too much at stake for these fighters, and these decisions are being made, and it is costing them irreparable harm, right? They're losing out on something so significant, whereas in the NBA, where the comparison is being made, they blow that game, they move on. Maybe it affects seeding at the maximum. It's not the same stakes. You're absolutely right. And I also don't think there needs to be a perfect solution before there's any solution. But I have to admit, I am skeptical. I am cynical in this regard of I don't know what the impact of the transparency would be. I don't ultimately see it.
I mean, I kind of see what you're saying, Rick, because it's also just like it's so difficult because as long as we have this way of scoring fights, it's going to be so difficult because going back and watching the fight, it was still like at the end of the day, no matter how you scored it, it was just an unbelievably close fight. No one really had gigantic moments other than when Albazi almost had the choking in the 3rd round. Like those other 4 rounds, like you could make the argument that round 1 went to Albazi. Like I don't know if people would be acting differently had Chris Lee just had the first 3 rounds for Albazi, but like,
yeah,
at the end of the day, it was just such a close fight, and there weren't like massive moments that clearly separated one guy other than that 3rd round.
I'm less mad about the scorecard than I am about the fact that like we don't get any explanations. No one, us, the fighters, the camps, no one gets, and it's actually becoming like more and more mysterious. I saw a tweet from Danny Rubenstein over the weekend where he's like, he doesn't even know, you know, how long his fighters are medically suspended for. Like all of this is so. Why is this all so mysterious? Why is it all so, you know? And I want to get into the Jared Gordon thing. We don't have time at the top here, but like, it still shocks me that the sport is being run in some ways the way in which it's being run with certain things, right? A lot has changed and a lot has evolved for the better with weight classes and rules and all that stuff. But the fact that, you know, we just, and by the way, going back to the previous point, like we just kind of accomplished the broadcasting issue. Remember there was a time where like the broadcasters didn't even know the rules. And now we're like, oh, okay, we held some seminars and you can see like the broadcasters are more in tune, although sometimes weird things are still being said. How about the public? How about you inform us? How about you let us know? what you're thinking. How about let's start with the media. We'll inform the public. You guys don't worry about the public. Inform the media, and then we'll inform the public. That'll be our job. And like I saw an interview with Mazzulli, who I like, with Aaron Bronstein, and he's like, I need to protect these guys. And he said something. Did I write it down? He said one thing. Maybe I didn't write it down. He said one thing about protecting these guys. I'm like, why? Why do you need to protect them? No one's, first of all, no one's forcing them to do this job. Second of all, they're grown men and women. They don't get paid enough. All right. So what are you going to do about that? That's not our problem. That's not the fighter's problem. If it always comes back to they're not getting paid enough, like, they're choosing to do this. So if you're choosing to do something that has a huge impact on people's lives, and there's so much at stake for so many different people, like, we need just some transparency. Again, I'm not going to sit here and cry after every single event and be like, they screwed this one up, they screwed this one. But like, when there's these big fights with so much at stake, main event, and it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth because, you're watching and you're like, oh, I got that. That's 4-1. You're like, what? This guy didn't win? How could I have gotten this so wrong? I would love to know. I would love to learn myself as a media member, and then I would love to explain to all of you, this is why X, Y, and Z was done. But we don't have any of that. And I can't compare that to any other sport. Now, I'm not naive. I know that in other sports there's controversial moments and plays, and people are going to debate them and talk about them all the time. But in this one, it's like you don't even get any answers. You get nothing. You get weird shit in this sport every day. In the post-fight press conference, Dana White, who's the only one that has to answer, it's not even his questions to answer, really. He was asked about Brandon Royval getting because this is a flyweight fight, and Albazi's like, I'm next, and Royval's the backup fighter. He told us this. He's the backup fighter for July 8th, Brandon Moreno against Alexandre Pantoja. He's like, I'm backup fighter and I'm next. Dana White was asked about if Brandon Royval is next. This is how crazy this sport is. Nothing makes sense. This is what he said after he was asked that question.
Obviously, we had Colby Covington.
No, not that one. Sorry.
He wants to fight.
Not that one. It's the other one. This is what he said. This is Dana Saturday.
So there's some confusion, I guess, right now. Like, Brandon Royval has said that he's the backup for the flyweight title fight coming up. I don't know if you can make that official or if it is beneficial, but if that's the case, when a guy's a backup like that, are they kind of next if he's not needed this summer?
I mean, there's no guarantees that anybody's next. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that are factored into who's next. There's so much shit that goes on behind the scenes. And, no. Long-winded answer, no.
There's no guarantees? What? First of all, there should be guarantees for them, but there's no guarantee if you weigh in? Are you sure about that? Because I remember back in March, we were told specifically that Colby Covington is next because he weighed in. Remember that? Here's that clip.
Obviously, we had Colby Covington cage side. He wants to fight Leon in July. I'm curious if that's a fight you're interested in, or do you need to see how it plays out?
Yeah, I don't know when we'll do it, but yeah, that's the fight that makes sense. And Colby came here and cut weight, and did everything to be here for this fight. He deserves the fight.
So it's Leon Edwards versus...
Not to mention the fact that he's, the second or third best guy in the world.
So it is Leon versus Colby next?
Yeah.
And I know that you pretty much confirmed that Colby's going to get the next shot, but if Jorge Masvidal was to do something spectacular against Gilbert Burns, would you be willing to give him the title shot, given the history that he has with Leon?
Colby gets the next shot, no matter what happens.
What? What is the difference between the two? Second or third best guy, that's Pantoja. Weighing in, Pantoja's fighting. That's Royval. Royval's weighing in. What's the difference? No difference. But that's the crazy sport that we're residing in. And nothing makes sense. Everyone's all up in arms on this Monday and Saturday about the Tyson Fury stuff. I'm not going to do the whole Tyson Fury thing because we did that whole thing on Monday. Last week, or was it Wednesday, or was it the week before? I don't even remember. But we did that whole thing, that whole song and dance from his interview with Bro Bible. We did that whole story about the hypocrisy and the flip-flopping and baddest man on the planet. Let me be very clear about what's going on there. Because, yes, He talked about not wanting to do Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua, and now he's going gaga over Tyson Fury versus John Jones. The only thing that's going on there is he is trying to take something away from Francis Ngannou. That's it. You notice when he's talking about baddest man on the planet, he never brings up Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou does not exist anymore. It's John Jones. And the other baddest man on the planet is Tyson Fury. And so he wants to bring them together. Why? Because Francis can't fight John Jones, but he could fight Tyson Fury. And so they're trying to take Tyson Fury away from Francis Ngannou. As far-fetched as that may seem right now, that's what this is all about. It might have a little bit something to do with Stipe as well. Let's not forget, Stipe took the belt from Dana back in the day. He never forgets, and told his coach to put it around his waist. There's a lot going on there. Do they really, if the Tyson thing falls in their lap, will they go for it? Sure. But these are all mind games that are being played here. Number one, most importantly, against Francis Ngannou. That's the mind games that are being played. We're going to take this carrot that you are trying to go after, this bait that you're trying to go after. This is the greener pastures that you left us for. We're going to try to take this and distract him and have him come over here, or at least distract him long enough to where you get frustrated and you have to go elsewhere. They don't care that they're it's flip-flopping going all day, and no one's going to challenge it. No one's going to question it on a grander scale. And so, again, the reason I'm bringing this up, the reason I'm bringing up the Royval thing, feels like I'm smashing my head up against the wall. And so maybe the best thing to do is to just focus on the action and just focus on Jim Miller and just focus on Silva and just focus on Aldana this weekend and Michael Malott and Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. But it's hard when there's all this other crap going on. I'm sorry, I'm human. It's hard. We're trying to clear the cobwebs here and bring the truth and illuminate things, and at least this could be the place where, the real is spoken. But man, it's exhausting. It could be very exhausting. Anyway, then we can get to the whole Jared Gordon thing. We'll do that on the back end. But that was crazy in its own right. Jared Gordon gets a fight, on short notice after he gets knocked out, and somehow he's to blame for not being medically fit to fight, for accepting it. What about his reps? What about his manager? Why do they not get any blame? You guys saw the fight, UFC. Why would you even book him? Why would you even offer him this fight? There was no 55ers available? Of course the fighter's going to take the fight. That's what they do. They do crazy things. They fight for a living. It's hard to rationalize that.